Good morning, everyone. So, I need my glasses. So, good morning, and it is a pleasure and an honor to host the third edition of the Reboot Conference under the theme CRITIC CONDITION, which is indeed extremely relevant. We welcome Joana Vasconcelos and the Joana Vasconcelos Foundation. We have been following Joana's formidable work and career for a long time, and also her foundation, which has been doing a fantastic work for many years. The Joana Vasconcelos Foundation is creating a collection of works by herself and other artists, while at the same time preserving Joana's individual collection. The foundation awards scholarships to people who wouldn't otherwise be able to study, collaborates in projects and initiatives by other organizations, has charitable objectives, and supports socially relevant causes. In addition to my personal friendship with Joana, which thankfully exists for more than 20 years, Philip's relationship with her also goes back a long way. Among other events featuring her, we've had a solo exhibition of her work here in Berkeley Square some years ago. Let's hope Joana and her team feel like they're coming back home. We're very excited and looking forward to hearing the panels, talks, and the different approaches to the subject that the distinguished guests will share with us. I'm certain this will be a very rich morning, full of meaningful ideas. Thank you so much to all those participating and to everyone present. And now I'm introducing the first panel called CRITIC CONDITION, the event's namesake panel. And the panel will be a discussion by two members of the International Association of Art Critics, AICA, UK-based Portuguese art critic and curator Dr. Rui Cepeda, and current AICA UK president, the art critic and curator Sacha Craddock. So,
great. Right, you go.
First of all, thanks for coming today, this morning, and also I'd like to say thanks for Joana to invite us to be part of the Reboot. And as art critics, we try to be away from institutions like Phillips because of financial connotations, but Joana's project, Educational View,
great start.
It was a good way for us to finally have our presence felt within an economic powerhouse like Phillips is. So thanks for having us, and I hope you enjoy your morning here.
Okay. When Rui and I were invited to speak about criticism generally, I was very excited because I love speaking very generally about exactly that. We don't have very long, and so what we hope to do is just go through a range of the changing role of the critic. We will start with both our own, not to be over-personalized, but to actually explain where we come from in terms, and we come from very different places, in terms of our relationship to critical writing, and also just in a way assess how things have changed and how perhaps the art critic as the adversarial, usually man, strutting about has very much changed because of the internet and so on. So my name is Sacha, and I trained as a painter at St. Martin's, and then I went to postgraduate in Chelsea. And I felt so obsessed with being a painter that the idea of writing would make you feel really guilty. And when I was asked if I could write, I mean, not if I could write, but whether I would write, I felt, God, I can't let down my discipline. Anyway, I soon started doing that, and I don't do any proper painting, even though a lot of very good drawing. And so, in a way, one's relationship to this is very different. A lot of people are particularly academic, but I come from a position of looking at work and actually just being really jealous of people making work often. So, in a way, I enter that process in another way. So the relationship between art and writing is deeply, deeply fascinating. What I always thought one should do when one was writing about art was, in a way, not provide the equivalent, not in a way pretend that what you're doing is in any way more or the same, but something that runs along parallel to the work you're talking about. It is important to avoid what happened later on to all of us, and what I've been at this for years, but which is where the written word became almost the word for a very short time. And in a way, in a very kind of literal postmodern world, somehow this equated with that, and therefore that became the argument, and therefore the relationship to the actual artwork became secondary, and therefore the relationship to experience became secondary. I hope you're following what I'm saying. So it's very, very important to sort of somehow characterize what one is there for. And I have a number of kind of suggestions about how the artist Benjamin Buchloh says, the judgment of the critic is raided by the curators, organizational access to the apparatus of the culture industry. In other words, we're a bit cut out these days. Or by the collector's immediate access to the object in the market or art auction. So again, there's a sort of shift of emphasis. So now all you have to have is the competence of quality judgments and the high-level connoisseurship that kind of involves one in investment expertise. So the idea of running alongside, hoping intelligently to, in a way, channel change, or when, as Dave Hickey said, or when nothing is changing, when no one is dissenting, then criticism goes. So in a way, for me, it's always been from kind of curating to making my own work to writing, a strange relationship that wants to avoid a notion of ownership that is purely about speaking intelligently and elucidating and hoping to elucidate that which one sees or hears or experiences. I'm not falling in a trap of just saying it's seeing. Okay, Rui, what's your background?
So I come from different backgrounds. My background is more in terms of management, so I'm very comfortable with numbers. So, and one day someone invited me to start writing about art for a national Portuguese newspaper. So what can I write? And start writing from a perspective of managing, talking about numbers, but not numbers as the important thing, just a component on the discourse about, together with the aesthetics. There's a big gap within the art world in terms of numbers. No one wants to say the price, no one wants to say how much is the production costs. We try to avoid that discussion. And because there's not, when we do a critic or when we write about work, we don't put that context in the context of why that work was produced. So my idea was start writing and introduce it as the same way you're talking about the kind of painting they use or the kind of structure in terms of, let's say, fabric, the component with the numbers. And at the same time, I'm coming from an academic side, which is also different from Sacha, and I think the only part we have in common is the production as curators of, she's more into exhibitions, I'll be more into festivals or projects that will be more aimed to local communities than to the artistic community, so trying to outreach. And
so perhaps in your different background, then we come together in AICA and we talk about defending the rights for people to defend and talk about things like censorship and so on. So in a way, it's about sort of having a kind of centralizing middle. So, but I think it's quite important to talk about how things have changed. And obviously, I'm older, so, and obviously you're very sophisticated, and you've lived, a lot of you are so much younger, but some of you lived through this change in relationship to the internet and to accessibility of the image. And so suddenly, from writing for a newspaper to suddenly finding that, that the internet has very much changed the notion of who can speak and who's able to speak. And now you'll find fantastic number of people can speak, but in a way they're not organizing their language enough to kind of really back it up. So I'm not particularly into liberalism, but there is a way in which you could be seen to run parallel. And so I just want to give an example of when I was writing for a newspaper 1,000,000 years ago. Then, well after the internet had been invented, The Guardian was well behind. And so you'd be working on a typewriter and then reading to a copy taker. And the person would take your copy down, you'd go, stop, no, full stop, start. And you could hear the copy taker giggling, thinking, this is really nonsense. This is really esoteric, I don't understand what this is. But anyway, having to carry on like that. So in a way, the other parallel was this kind of relationship to technology and the shifts in that. And the idea also, speaking very seriously, a big shift is a much greater academicization of an understanding of art. And in a way that means that people who can afford to be critics can also be academics and have full-time jobs in institutions. So you get that as well. So I'd like to talk also about the relationship. So, hold on, blimey. Okay, so another thing, and we have Marjorie Althorp-Guyton here, who was an editor of ArtScribe. And I wanted to always talk about how, when we were younger, the idea of an international language was absolutely suddenly the thing. And when Spain came out of fascism, everything had to be translated, obviously, into Catalan and into Castilian and English. So this whole idea of a new Europe with a kind of the idea of internationalism, of course, breaking out of fascism, and that, I don't have talked to you all you lot about that, but it's very much to do with I remember ArtScribe being a kind of British magazine, and ArtScribe became international. But the idea of international language is somewhat archaic, because who is speaking for who? Whose international is this? You know, this idea that somehow a certain number of people would decide that this would be speaking for all is an incredible contradiction. So the idea of something speaking to all as opposed to someone speaking about themselves that all must understand is a major shift, a major shift. I know I'm talking generalities, but I thought it'd be quite nice to talk about these things. So this sort of idea of internationalism became incredibly not really international, of course. I mean, it was a kind of Western art world, fair enough, it was. I'm not getting to complete apologies all the time, but this idea that certain things would be allowed into this or be seen as speaking. And then a shift, and then, of course, someone like me not being able to or feeling strange about maybe a move towards Mexican art. Wow, Mexican art, really cool. And I'm going, well, how am I looking at this? Going to, first exhibitions like Magician de la Terre, how are you looking? Who are you looking for? What kind of brain are you using? Internationalism, Rui?
Going a little bit back to where you start. So I'm one generation after you, so I start with a computer, and the internet was part of the process. And when we're discussing notes, Sacha and I, we realized that we have a different kind of process of writing and keeping those notes safe so we can reuse it on a later date or don't use it. And one thing that we both use notebooks, but most of my writing is done on my mobile, so I lose most of the notes.
Yeah.
While Sacha, you can see she's just scrabbling everything. And that's a difference in terms of critics, generational critics. Another difference we have is that, as Sacha was saying before, before was that adversarial position of a white male deciding what is and what is not. Nowadays, and you can see from AICA members, is so diverse, their background, or our background, that there's different approaches and different ways of thinking about the work we're seeing and looking at, and then describing or translating it to different language that different people from different parts of the world will understand it. So you don't just have one own view, which will be the European one. So that's why this notion of international language now has become much more dissolved than it was 20 years ago. Now, it's not a global language, but it's a language that people from different parts of the world with different cultural backgrounds will relate more to what has been said. And I think this has been one of the most important changes that happen in our world as critics. That's that our conversation is stopping just concerned by middle-aged men, white, from Europe, and now it's changing from, exactly, and now changing from conversations with people in Africa. Fortunately, next year we have the Venice Biennial is Adriano from Brazil. Have art from and good critics from Asia also bringing their own background, their own context to this world global discourse. Sacha, you want to say anything more?
Yes, I do. I think we have to bring it forward now because obviously it's very boring for people to hear one's stories, except that it's important. But I think before we talk about what AICA does and aims to do and has historically been doing since just after the war, I think it's very important to kind of, in a way, perhaps reclaim the relationship to work. I feel that the idea is that many claim that critics have become PR agents for artists and for galleries and for the art market. And in a way, one's often asked by an artist to help them in every way, but also to really look at what they're doing and see if even in their own terms, it could be better, not in heavily moralistic terms, but how something could be better. So that's, in a way, the way I've always written, a bit like a teacher. And I was told many years ago, which was write for people you don't know, not people you want to impress, but I've never really managed that. One tries to do it both. But so the idea that one could reclaim that relationship, and I often talk to artists about, not in kind of heavy moral terms, how would you be doing something if you weren't doing that, or you were doing something completely different, waste of time, but actually how you could think a bit more about how it manifests itself in some kind of relationship between the context, the political context, and, which is what we're going to talk about later, I assume, especially about public art and about work existing in the public realm, and the context and the way it might appear. I think one of the big problems for artists now is that in a way they have to be judge, jury and defendant of their own work. So they have to be in the process of making, which, I don't want to romanticize, but is particular, and yet outside it seeing what's the significance of it. And sometimes it's a kind of duality that really drives people mad. And it's useful for someone like me to actually write in a way that is purely suggestive and purely sometimes descriptive, because also the relationship to the experience of work is so undermined by the over-theoretization at times that in a way I remember over years of writing and teaching and saying something about, have you seen such and such an exhibition? And the young people go, no. And you go, why not? Well, it's almost as if that kind of notion of experience is secondary. But the problem is, if you don't experience things, you don't have your own independent, autonomous, actual opinion. And every individual must realize that they actually have opinions about visual language, and it's not just critics. So in a way, the role of the critic is to dig that out and allow that to float around a bit. But it's also to stop the idea of understanding, over-representation of meaning, and something that becomes, in a way, a parallel, something that sets up, in a way, sometimes that stands in front of the work, and therefore the writing can get in the way of the work. So there's a circularity here. Rui, can you please now tell everybody about the history of AICA?
Okay. So AICA was created after the Second World War by an independent group of people that decided that, or thought, there should be a voice explaining and defending in a way, and also educating the world about art, especially after what happened the years before. It was created in Paris under the UNESCO remit? Remit, yes. And since then, we've been part, arm's length of UNESCO activities. At the moment, we have kind of 4,400 critics around the world. I think it's roughly
36 countries or whatever?
Yeah, something. No, more, sorry.
More.
So 80
Amazing.
80 countries? 65 countries. We're lacking in Africa. I think we only have 6 countries in Africa, but we are very obviously in Europe, Latin America, or American continent, and some in the US, Asia. UK, at the moment, we're roughly 310 professional people that dedicate part of their life to evaluate, or not evaluate, to go and watch, see what's on the walls. And between many other things, apart from the normal criticality, is what Sacha was saying, try to bring this new generation through educational programs to membership programs and guide them, especially because anyone can be a critic or anyone can write and have their voice heard through social media. We know that they'll be happy if there's someone that can help them to get their voice in the written paper or in the words.
I mean, membership is pretty heavily vetted, isn't it?
Yes, we have a
honest.
very, yes.
It's not like an absolute doddle.
No.
You have to write properly.
So there's a process of, they have to send us
Number of examples.
They're related to the past years. They have to have someone to recommend them, saying that they are which kind of areas they're working to, or what's their interests. So there's a process of vetting if they have a voice within the art critic role or not.
But the important thing is that as an organisation, it has an overview role, and that is in terms of things like censorship and what's going on in certain countries. And so that's very, very important.
Then, yeah, that's sort of thing. We have not the last conference, we had Turkey, which was one issue there in terms of censorship. We had our conference there every year. We do a conference in a chosen country. This year is going to be in Poland in mid-November. Fortunately, things change in terms of political aspect in Poland, but the topic of these conferences is to do with that institutionalization and of the critic of the art world that was happening in Poland the last couple of years through the, what's the name of the party? The Law and Justice Party that was very nationalistic in their views of what was presented, should be presented as an art object. So every year in terms of AIC International, we try to have our conference in places that will make a change in terms of censorship, or say bringing that freedom of voice to that, and through our international voices give it more to that particular community.
So thank you. So just to sort of just let us think a bit before we have a break, because this was meant to be a very relaxed event on my part, this thing. So as I'm just going to give you, and of all people, I want to, and this sounds like an adversarial white man, but I don't care. I just want to read to you something by Jerry Saltz, which is in 2021, which when interviewed by the White Pube about what does an art critic do, how does an art critic exist, and he says a critic's job is to get very, very quiet within themselves. Listen very closely to the voices in your head, even those who say the things you do not want to hear, and deliver that in the most direct way possible to the reader. And then say what they say in the most honest way possible, in order that the reader or viewers may get a handle, and then he gets a bit carried away, on a cosmic bundle. But the important thing is that when you have all these conflicting things going on, you just have to lay them down. You just have to say, you can't end up being somebody that kind of, in a way, is just a facilitator of the market, for instance. On the other hand, there's a lot of talk about certain people dominating criticism because, in a way, they make more money than other people. That's absolutely ridiculous. And the world in which we exist means there are fewer places, but there is the internet and it's free, I think. It's just that we have to live in the meantime.
Oh, yes. I think it's probably the most, one of the concerns we have in terms of writing is
yes,
very well paid.
Okay, I think is that it? Or do you want more? Oh, questions? Probably not.
You have another 10 minutes. So.
Okay, babes. Do you want us to go on? Okay.
So, one thing we have in terms of that voice is we have going from printed press, magazines, newspapers, TV, radio, social media, obviously, Instagram, Facebook, webpage, and have some of our members also use stand-up comedy as a way of being this direct voice, saying without being politically correct what they think out loud.
We need to encourage different disciplines and media, but also we need to not worry about it too much. Mm-hmm. Because we need to help people, younger people, to feel that they can write, because everybody is capable of speaking about contemporary art. And more I go on, the more I hear people saying, oh, I'm waiting for the curator to come and tell me what this is about. I'm waiting, what is this? And you're like, it's here. Now what do you think it is? So in a way, there is this need to encourage a sort of sense of confidence in people that look. People are we are more sophisticated in visual language than anything else, and yet it's the one discipline that gets left behind two notions of expertise and narrative. This is what this is about. And in a kind of slightly more old-fashioned, more modernistic thing, there would be a gap between what was produced and the notion of its comprehension in some way. And that gap would be open. And now it's sort of filled in like a coffin. It's filled in, and it was like, someone like a brilliant British abstract painter called Prunella Clough died in 1999. Fantastic abstract paintings. Within 5 seconds, people were saying, this is what this is about. And I was going, don't think so. I think it's something to do with its physicality, its relationship to collage, its relationship to the surface, which she thought was like a garden, which you planted. And all these things that I'm talking, but everyone else can see that. All they had to do was start feeling. It's the notion of understanding was so kind of secondary to the experience of the work initially.
It's that idea of not closing the work and allow people to think about it, but different people think about it, and also giving a voice, empowering those that normally don't have the empowerment to.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
Between art critic and curator, there is a
Yes, there must be, I think. I mean, you can be both the same thing, but in your practice, I mean, when you're doing one thing, it's very hard to be both, and it's a very good question. And often it seems that the curatorial project is so enormous, or kind of in a way understood to be that thing, and actually the relationship between the curator and the artist it can be close, but it can also, there should be again a little gap and then another gap, so you get this kind of different otherwise there is again that idea of something being sealed and delivered as a package of commercial value but also kind of conceptual value, and I think that does rather deny the role of art in some way.
But today, we think about art as a duo between the curator and the artist. So every show needs to have a curator and the artist. But the art critic is something else.
Yes.
So what do you think about that?
Well, I think that the art critic should be around and encouraged and paid to exist in some way or another, to play a role, because it is different, because criticism, by the way, this is called critic condition. Criticism is such an important thing. I mean, but it's not being horrid. But you know, if you're teaching, people cry if you say anything now. I mean, it's very difficult.
I just thought that it would be nice to talk about open grid as an idea, because you said, Sacha, that there is a vetting process behind getting to
Do you want to do it? Oh, you want me to do it? Okay, yes, okay. If you don't mind. I mean, AICA has started running something based on what we've been talking about, something called open crits, where you go to a gallery. You don't have had to obviously everybody knows different things. Some people are major experts, some people have read loads. We're not all completely equal at the point of looking, but at some point we are. In another way we are. So we start there and work back in towards what we know, rather than take everything we know and that's it. And the idea is that we organize to just go to an exhibition in a gallery and actually somehow talk among ourselves about what we see and therefore what it might mean. Okay. So that's completely back to front. So we're going to go tomorrow to the Barbican, and when Rui fixed it up, the Barbican said, marvelous, marvelous. But you know, do you want the curator to explain? And it's like, well, no, don't actually. We're quite grown up, you know. Yeah, we quite like going to shows and looking at them and thinking, then you read the stuff. Or maybe you do before, but it's a completely different relationship to experience, and I think it's very, very undermined. I mean, obviously, the great thing about the internet and Instagram is you can all see images non-stop. So, okay, and some people out of place, you know, people far away from the exhibition won't be able to see it, okay. But if you have the ability or possibility of actually seeing something and then thinking about what it is and talking about it to other people. I mean, we did it in Venice at the opening Biennale, and it was like mind-blowingly exciting. Because people are like, oh my God, I mean, you know, and people are really kind of clever people feeling ennobled again to actually talk about something they've seen. Yeah. Mental.
Just getting out of that the curator framework and getting into the empowering the voice of different people.
And then, i.e., being critical.
Yes, being critical.
Because that process opens it up the other way.
And I think for tomorrow we have from fine art students, critics, press, normal press, and people normal people.
Whoever they are.
Yeah. So it's an open critic. Everyone can. It's just nice discussion about art.
Gary? Oh. Here we go.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
It's quite a diverse audience, lots of different parts of the industry represented.
Yes.
What can the wider industry to support critical access and the role of the critic?
Brilliant question. Well, for instance, we're setting up, again, a mentoring scheme where there's a match between members and then younger people wanting to write. So we're doing that. So, I mean, you could just always help.
Not only, that's
mean,
not only mercenaries, we're talking about, okay, financial helps, but we need a space to bring someone. We need people that will be available to mentor someone that's just starting to write, have 3 or 4 years to write. There's lots of logistic things that's not money related, but it's logistics that helps, that special.
It's enabling.
Enabling that, and then having that 1 year, 2 years to accompany someone that's starting to write and think critically about what's happening in the art industry, in the art world. But that becomes very intense between those two people because you're talking about personal things. Art critic is about the personal.
I'm
ideas.
sorry, it was a really great question and my answer was really facetious. It's not just money, obviously. It's the consciousness of that need. And actually, as the public sector gets so diminished in education, people have to pay a lot for education, and somehow it'd be very nice to actually tell young people they are part of that understanding or observation.
I just wanted to say, I'm also bored of IECA, so that's why I kind of get involved. But it's really important to have interdisciplinary dialogue, because we all need to learn as we go about emerging environments and what's going on around us.
Yeah.
So art is not isolated from the rest of the world. So that is, I think, something really important for you as well, to have that exposure and to have that communication with other industries as well.
Absolutely.
More questions?
No.
Marjorie?
No, I just think one of the things would be to host critical debate, particularly in the marketplace. I think the curator is right, to some extent, reified in some business. Of course, some curators are brilliant critics. The whole act of creative is an act of criticism to some extent. So to open up, dealers and private galleries to host critical debate, it may not be very helpful to them, particularly if there are negative opinions formed, but I think it's very helpful. And the problem for the general public entering and approaching the art world is there doesn't seem to be any judgment. Everything
Absolutely.
Everything is reified. Everything is typed.
And signed, sealed, and delivered.
Exactly. And I think a lot more honesty would be welcomed by a broad public outside the industry. After all, these are the future collectors potentially. What they want is honest appraisal. And I think the critic has a very important role. That has been lost.
That is brilliant. And it's so true because actually nobody knows, nobody has any idea of what's backstage, what's behind these decisions, why. And in a way, instead of going into sort of like a really nihilistic adolescent why, one should actually be able to look at work, talk about it, and unpick. You can end up saying, well, I really don't think so. But on the other hand, just through that process of, for instance, organizing events where it's more open and a lot of people, and it's not just those received people. Just the last thing from me, many years ago, I went to a panel and they're all like really tired looking art critics. They all had this look, they looked like they talked about it before. And I thought, I don't think this is very polite to an audience to look like, oh, yeah, as if it was all in the green room and it was nothing to do with them. And I thought, I'm never going to do that. This is outrageous behavior. It's so rude to people who really, really are part of a discussion about art. I mean, the public is as well.
Sorry, can I just say something?
Yeah.
And I think that the opening of this space here at Phillips to this kind of discussion
Great.
is something that it becomes very transparent. We all have different views of the art market.
Yeah.
But without the art market, we wouldn't be here. This discussion wouldn't be happening absolutely in favor of transparency, and very happy to welcome you and all the opinions.
This is such a great space.
I think we are.
Thank you.
doing
That'd be
that.
amazing. Amazing. Great.
I
Okay.
think we're going back
We're
to
done.
where we started. That's
done. Thank
one
you.
of the reasons we're here. Thank you.
So, thank you for this fantastic first panel. I think we all learned a lot. And now I'm introducing the second panel. It is a reflection on the role of foundations in today's cultural landscape. It is called Foundation Support for Artistic Creation, Training of New Audiences and Education. This panel will be moderated by Turin-based Pre-Contemporary Cultural Center and podcast founder Iole de Persano, and will include a representative from the Michelangelo Foundation, Head of Education Celine Vogt, and philanthropist and collector Nikki Wilson from the Jupiter Artland Foundation. Unfortunately, other panelists are unable to attend. Oh, okay. Wonderful, fantastic. Welcome. Wonderful, fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, I think where should we wait a second. I have a different chair. Is it? Yes. Is it working? I want to thank everyone, especially from the Reboot organization, for having me here today. And I want also to thank, because it was very, very interesting to hear Sacha and Rui talking about the critic condition nowadays. I feel, just for you to know, I run and I'm the founder of Recontemporary, which is an institution for video in Italy. And we do a lot of mediation for the public, but we also do and ask a lot of questions to the public. It's always interesting, and I think probably one of the main reasons I started this project was because it's really interesting how video nowadays is part of our way of communicating. We also communicate through video calls, and we are surrounded by video everywhere. And it's interesting because part of my generation, it's always said, especially in Italy, that the younger public is not part of the art field anymore, and so I feel that it's actually interesting to see how also the art field has changed through the years, and also the way of talking about art, well, I'm proud to say that we have a very young public coming in our space to see the exhibition, and it's interesting to see how actually they are open to this kind of language. But I feel that art, we need always to remember to people, especially to the most open and common public, that art is a universal language made of forms, made of emotion, made of concepts, and it's really interesting that for us, being part of this world, this is something very basic and part of our daily life. But for people, like it's not so common. Like they see, how many of you have heard contemporary art? I don't know anything about it, or it's too difficult for me. And we are like, why? It's completely open to everyone. And But posing and asking question, it's what we need to do, especially with the most open public. That's why I'm here asking question, and I'm very happy to do it to such important foundations, and also to ask them the role of foundation nowadays in this field, because we have museum, we have different kind of organization. I am a cultural association and a young institution, but foundation really plays an important role on this field. So, well, I don't know if you want to introduce a bit of your foundation first, but I will ask each of you to, while you are doing it, to please tell us which is the most innovative aspect that you think your foundation is doing in terms of work. I'll leave to you the.
Shall I start? Ooh. I'm Nikki Wilson from Jupiter Artland in Scotland, and this is lovely to see everybody here. Really an honour to be sitting up here. I don't do much of this, so if I stumble and sound a bit rubbish, then that's why. But I run and set up a foundation with well, it wasn't a foundation. So in Scotland, foundations don't really exist. I mean, they do for financial institutions, but culturally, we don't have philanthropic foundations. So we're, what we do, I suppose, is a sort of interesting, it's evolved into what the work we do now. So we started in 2008 with a large installation which was done by Charles Jenks and followed by Andy Goldsworthy, who I wanted to support because there wasn't any work in Scotland. Very personal around we live in the middle of land, and you know it was immediately evident that we needed to do something with it. The moment we built a Charles Jenks, we knew we needed to open to the public, so that's where the decision to open to the public came from. And slowly but surely, we built this quite substantial collection of large, commission-only, site-specific sculptures, really through a variety of friendships that I had made through my art career, and also sort of lovely introductions from, I was introduced to Joana by Karen Wright, actually, who I had met on a holiday, and you know, and actually, so sometimes critics are very good at ameliorating a friendship that then goes on and does masses of explosive things like building swimming pools and things like that, and back on. But as the reputation of Jupiter grew, I suppose what our thinking was that really we noticed that art education in Scotland was on the floor, that there was virtually no money being given to that, and we were very aware that our local audience were never going through the portals of the National Galleries of Scotland. Basically, I mean, almost every institution has a barrier. It might as well have a plastic barrier saying "do not enter." It's so intimidating for people to walk through. So we realized that outside is a very good way of people just walking and coming along and seeing art, and they engaged with it in a way that was really extraordinary. So we set up an education foundation, and over the last 15 years, I mean, we've had about 40,000 school children, and we do proper learning programs. So we do proper engagement. People spend a whole day with us. We do whole school engagement. We're very low key about it, but today is the day to show off about it. So I can't tell you that is absolutely the main driver for Jupiter. And actually yesterday, I'm incredibly proud that Jupiter has always been, because we live in the Scottish environment, which is quite judgmental about private money and, you know, the people who are we to say do these things. We've actually stepped beyond our walls, and we've created a program called Jupiter Plus. So we're taking a really world-class work of art by Rachel McLean across Scotland to the dying high streets and taking our learning program there. And yesterday I was standing, and it was a wonderful thing in Ayrshire, where the high street is on the floor. There are about 20 shops left, and they're all tattoo parlours and fast food. And we've got 2 abandoned shops, and we've turned one into an installation by Rachel McLean and the other with the learning programme. And that will be the future for us, that we go to the public and say, exactly as you say, do not be intimidated by this work. Do not be overfaced by the fact that, Rachel is a really bloody cool woman. I mean, don't be intimidated. Come in, see what you think. And the magic of these artworks really does translate into moving ahead. And you can see here I'm wearing Artists Make a Better World. Well, slowly but surely Jupiter's getting a bit political, because there were all those Labour councillors all wanting to talk to me about how do we bring advocacy, how do we bring engagement to these young people, because the truth is, without our young people learning to speak their own minds, they're not going to vote. They're not going to have a thought about, when they listen to BBC, whether they're being fed a diatribe of pejorative stuff or not. They're not going to have views of their own. So slowly but surely, Jupiter's becoming a little bit political, and we're going to carry on being political until we can see that STEM, which is the teaching English, science, technology, English and maths, turns into STEAM, and that we have art at the centre of our curriculum, and that we are engaging and activating young minds to think for themselves. I mean, in Scotland in particular, it's a perilous time. We could become independent, and that would be great, but only if we know what we're doing, and that we have a pipeline of young creative people coming along. You can tell I'm very passionate about it, and I could go on for hours, so I'll stop now.
I completely agree with you, and I think, contemporary art, what it's doing is actually making questions, so let people thought about our daily life, our problem issues. But just also another question for you. I've read that you also have the Orbit Youth Council, which is, I think, quite interesting in terms of young public.
So the Orbit Youth Council began as 18 young people from all over the country, so from Shetlands and Orkney. We brought them, and they come for 10 different sessions. A lot of those young people have never left their towns, so this is a big deal, coming to the outskirts of Edinburgh. And it's a 10-month project where they create a peer group where they all become great friends, they get mentorship. So yesterday afternoon I was mentoring a 16-year-old who doesn't know if she wants to go and do art, doesn't know how to tell her dad that she wants to be an artist, because actually there's no money in the family. How do we talk about, how do I persuade my dad that I'm allowed to have that career, and that it might be worth, while. That job in Tesco's is winking at her dad for her, and that's 16, that's her destiny sorted. So we're teaching how to speak about the possibilities of the creative industries, where she could actually make a living, the reality of life, what the breadth of it is in Scotland, and that is the powerhouse behind the Orbit Youth Council. And they each city that we go to, so we did Perth, Ayr, and then the whole of Scotland, have a youth council that we mentor. It's a joy.
Well, thank you, Nikki, because I think it's like a very common problem and issue for a lot of realities to have this gap between younger generation and the field, the market, and the possibility of doing art. But Cecile, do you want to tell us more about what you're doing and with Michelangelo Foundation?
With pleasure. Yeah. So my name is Celine Vogt. I'm the head of education and institutional partnerships at the Michelangelo Foundation. First of all, I would like to thank Joana and her team for bringing me again to Reboot. It's the second edition. and I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for bringing us together, because listening to Nikki, I can already think of, oh, maybe there's a place for us to collaborate. So that's very interesting to me. To give you an overview on the work of the Michelangelo Foundation, we are a non-for-profit foundation based in Geneva, Switzerland, but we operate at a European level first, and now we have the intention of going beyond Europe too. We work to support craftsmanship and to make craft profession relevant for the future, socially, culturally, financially, in its globality. You asked about innovation and what you think is innovative about our action. Within the foundation, I think the way we try to accomplish our mission is rather innovative. We work to support human excellence and human practices, and so the human is always at the center. And it's very basic as a starting point, but at the same time, it's not anymore always the case. So I think the fact of having the human at the center is quite innovative in 2023. In order to accomplish our mission, we have different lines of actions. We have events and exhibition. Our main event is called Homo Faber. It's a biennale of craftsmanship held in Venice every 2 years. And during this biennale, what we aim to do is not to show a chronological perspective on craftsmanship, but different point of views on what craft is today. When I was listening to the first discussion around art critics, I was thinking, well, actually, what is the place of cultural mediation in art critics? And what we do, for example, at Homo Faber, we bring a team of 100 young people from the world of craft and design from all over Europe. They become what we call our young ambassadors, and they are the cultural mediators of the exhibition, which means that they welcome the visitors, not with a predefined discourse, but they share their thoughts on a certain piece. They share their inputs, and the idea is that they create a link with the public. So just wanted to share this example in relation to the previous session. So I said we had events. We have also a digital program called the Homo Faber Guide. It's an online platform where we map craftspeople all over the world. And there the idea is to give visibility in time to makers. It's a work that takes a long time and that will never be finished, but and something that we are continuing to do every day. And the last line of action is related to education. We launched this past September at Joana Vasconcelos' studio a program called the Homo Faber Fellowship Program, which has the ambition of bringing together established artisans with young graduates from craft and design school. We identified the moment when craftspeople get out of school to be quite a tricky moment for this audience, and a very, very dangerous one too, because very often they don't find the next step to move forward in their career. So a lot of them actually leave the sector right at the end of their studies, or at least 2 years after graduating. So we came up with a model where we pair young talent or not so young talent with established artisans, and we sponsor a 7-month program starting with a masterclass on creative practices and entrepreneurship, and continuing with a sponsored internship. And this also has the benefit of relieving the artisan from the financial pressure of training an artisan, while allowing the younger generation to enter the work world. That's for the foundation. Voilà.
Well, I want also to hear about the Rothschild Foundation, which is your
yes, of course,
from, right?
Of course. Thank you so much.
With this changes.
No, thank you so much for inviting us. And clearly I'm not Edoardo, but I am Pippa Shirley, and I am the director of Waddesdon Manor. And Waddesdon is, in a sense, the kind of the physical flagship of the Rothschild Foundation, which is a family philanthropic foundation, which is chaired by Lord Rothschild. And Lord Rothschild, as you all know, is a kind of a giant in the world of art and of philanthropy. And the foundation, I think, is a really kind of interesting entity because it has lots of different strands to its activity. So it acts as a kind of a forum. It convenes people to kind of discuss issues and ideas that map onto its own kind of funding interests. It's also very active in the environment and conservation and sustainability. In fact, getting increasingly active in that sphere because clearly that's something which is a challenge, to us all and something that we all need to be kind of involved in and making changes in that area. But it's also very active in social inclusion and in education, and obviously, as you can tell from its support of Waddesdon, which is the kind of the single biggest thing that the foundation does. It's very active as well in the kind of the cultural and the artistic sector. I don't know how many of you have actually been to Waddesdon. So I hope that some of you have. Oh, really? I know that some of you will have done, but for those of you who haven't, it's really rather wonderful. It's a French Renaissance chateau which is perched on a hill in the middle of Buckinghamshire. It was built by a Viennese Rothschild. It's a kind of an architectural fantasy. It's incredibly romantic and it's filled with a very important collection of largely historic works of art. But it is also a major visitor attraction. So, we have between 350 to 400,000 visitors a year. And although lots of those are visiting the manor, they're also visiting the grounds and enjoying events and, doing all of the things which, as you all know, major visitor attractions do nowadays. But it's in terms of contemporary art and culture, I've always found it very interesting that the Rothschilds who built Waddesdon were not at all interested in the contemporary art of their day. So if you come to Waddesdon, you'll see wonderful 18th century paintings and works of art. You won't see any 19th century painting. And in fact, to some degree, the family ignored contemporary art, or our branch of the family ignored contemporary art at that point. But now that Lord Rothschild is running the foundation and is involved in the sort of the day-to-day running and the strategic direction of the foundation, he, of course, as you all know, is a very, very significant collector of contemporary art. So that has allowed us, because what Waddesdon does is to kind of reflect the Rothschild spirit and the Rothschild creativity, is to engage with contemporary art. So the foundation has a growing collection of contemporary artwork. And also, over the last sort of decade or a little bit more, in fact, we've been engaging more and more with contemporary artists and inviting them to come and sort of literally bounce off the collection. And one of the, the most significant interventionists in that respect has, of course, been Joana, with whom we have a long and wonderful relationship, and the wedding cake, which I hope you're all going to see later on today, is the greatest sort of manifestation of that. But what that programme does is all about access, fundamentally. It's about making sure that the place is a kind of a living, breathing, responsive place, and that young people in particular can feel that there's something to engage with at Waddesdon, because we look at our demographic and it's what you might expect for a property which is in fact owned by the National Trust. So, a lot of our visitors are National Trust visitors. They probably aren't expecting to find contemporary art at a place like Waddesdon. And so a huge part of the drive of both the manor and the foundation is to widen that access, to show people, young people in particular, what art and contemporary art can do. What you were saying was so inspirational, actually, in terms of the agency which art has to develop and to improve and to ameliorate life for young people and indeed for everybody. And so alongside this sort of opening this great historic house to the public, the foundation is there funding and supporting a whole range of different initiatives, a lot of which support young people, both educationally, socially and culturally within Buckinghamshire, because we recognise we've got a really important responsibility to our local community. Buckinghamshire is a very divided county. There are areas of extreme wealth, there are areas of enormous deprivation, and it's a very racially diverse area as well. And you asked what our most sort of innovative thing that we're doing at the moment is, and I think it's actually all around that equality, diversity and inclusion. So we've got a number of new projects which we've set up, which are specifically focused at looking at our audiences, seeing how we can engage with them, encouraging them to come to see us as a place where they can grow and they can learn and they can be supported by the foundation and the work that we're doing. And I think it's early days. We're learning it at the moment, which is incredibly exciting. I'd love to come back in a couple of years perhaps and talk to you about how it's working. But we see that there's no future for places like Waddesdon unless you are building that audience and making those engagements. The whole kind of training piece that you were talking about is incredibly important. We've just set up a program called Pathways, which is about bringing young people 16 and up. We're specifically aiming it not at university graduates because we recognise that that's often seen as a great barrier to professional engagement with places in the arts sector, the heritage sector in general. And we just want to give them 6 months where they can come and see what we do, see that we're not a kind of a scary, exclusive place where they have no foothold. So that's just launched. We've had our first cohort of applicants coming in. The first sort of pathway interns are beginning to arrive, and we'll see what happens over the next year. It's going to be exciting, I hope.
Okay, thank you. You have made us all dream about going there as soon as possible and visit the foundation. And I want to thank the three of you, and the foundation, because all of them seems to play a very important role for the community and the society where they're placed in. But I have another question. We were talking about your effort on playing this role, but which are the limits also? Which are the difficulties that you face as a foundation when you speak with the public?
In Scotland, I would say it's the perception of being a private individual stepping into what would be perceived as the publicly funded arena, and there's quite a lot of. We've worked now for many years on our relationship with the public sector and and the galleries in Scotland, the cultural landscape, and finally we're being taken seriously. I think that's a very difficult thing, when you've got to be able to do things really well with the right intention, be very aware that your fleet of foot is because you're running your own institution is quite annoying to quite a lot of people. You're going to make mistakes, you have to own up to them, and what keeps me up at night is, I suppose, what goes on after I die. It's not quite keeping me up at night, but it is making me think, what is the legacy? Not a self-aggrandizing legacy, but this is now going to achieve quite a lot, and I want it to continue. And so I'm having my midlife crisis because we've done 15 years, and we are really, our ideas, we're learning, we are fleet of foot, but it's quite a challenge to think or envisage what's going to happen next. I've got 5 children. I'm certainly not going to hand them, this. That wouldn't be. They're all civil servants and trying to save the world anyway, so they're not interested. But I suppose the question comes: what happens to Jupiter and its energy? Because I suppose in the end of the day, we are now becoming quite important in that we are doing quite a lot of things that are making an impact. And I don't mean that, again, important as a sort of qualitative judgment. I'm just saying that, the fact is there aren't many of us in Scotland. So I'm so interested in what happens in Europe and America, where foundations are a practice that happens very easily, they're midwifed into their, well, not easily, don't diminish the effort, I just mean it's culturally more acceptable. We have this huge SMP mountain to climb, which is, there's a lot of antipathy. So, and we do that through being involved in everything. So I'm on the board of the National Galleries of Scotland, or was, and my husband's the chair of Creative Scotland. I can tell you that's a lot of fun at the moment. And we put in on that level. So I'm going back. I can't remember your question, but basically, what keeps me up at night? Those are the things.
Okay, thank you.
For us, I think it's about the perception of the craft sector and what people think about when they. It wasn't on. What people think about craftsmanship and what is a craftsperson. If you do the exercise for yourself, I'm not sure you will picture a young person, super dynamic, in a studio full of light. You might be imagining underground studio, quite an elderly man, white hair probably, a lot of dust everywhere. And so the idea of shifting this perception that the global audience have of the world of craft is very challenging to us. And we're also clear, I didn't mention this before, but the foundation was created only in 2016. So we have accomplished a lot since creation, but we have still a long way to go. It's one step at a time. But it's absolutely key, because without having a shift of perception on the sector, you don't have clients, you don't have buyers, you don't have the next generation of makers that will train in the sector. So this cultural heritage and this knowledge, this wealth of knowledge that exists today, still in Europe, and we're extremely lucky to have this preserved knowledge, might or is at risk of disappearing. So I would say about perception.
And I think for us, well, there are lots of things that are challenging, but it's about, I guess, as a funder, sort of being clear about where the support that we give can do most good, and that also relates to where the priorities for the foundation lie, because we do operate across quite a wide field, as I was saying, of different kinds of activity, and so it's kind of balancing, whether it's the conservation, the sustainability, and the environment piece, or the cultural piece, or the educational piece, or the social inclusion piece. Where just keeping all of those in a kind of in a sort of a balance, being kind of responsive, but keeping it all in a balance. I think that's quite a sort of a tricky strategic path to tread in some respects. And then I think the other thing is that we're a very well-established player, I think, in the kind of the cultural sector. We're quite well known for what we do, for what we support. We collaborate with big partners, sort of nationally and internationally. We have our exhibitions program and everything else at Waddesdon. But in these sort of slightly more embryonic areas for us, like diversity and inclusion, we're just finding that we have to be incredibly careful, because you can sort of swan into these realms and say, hello, we're the Rothschild Foundation, we'd like to give you lots of money. And they look at you and say, no, or why, or this all seems quite patronizing, in fact. So developing the right kind of tone and being absolutely sure that you're doing it for the right reasons, that it's not just polishing the brand, that it's not, that I think is work. We've got Ben in the room, who was an acting CEO of the foundation. So perhaps you should chip in on what you think the challenges are going forward. But that's how I perceive them.
Yeah, I think this is a very common problem for everyone. Nowadays in the art field, I feel also critic can feel also this is a big problem, especially nowadays, where we have to be careful in everything we say and how we say it. So, well, for me it has been very interesting. I don't know how much time do we have? 10 minutes more. Well, I have still question, but I also want public. I think everyone here can be interested in asking you a few questions. So if you have one, please join us in the conversation. No one?
Yeah, I just want to ask you, Nikki. I know, I have that. I just want to ask you, you talked about what's going to happen next, and the fact that sometimes you find your organisation is in a way advising local authority people. Do you think there could be, I mean, it's kind of how mad it is that things turned out that way, but it's really useful that you're doing this, and it's brilliant. Is there some way in the future, I mean, you can't see yourself educating the state, but what is that relationship? How could
Sort of public-private partnerships of
you think that you're wary of?
the wary of, and well, I'm not. I've decided not to be wary. I mean, this is because this is Joana's brought. She knows me very well. I'm very honest. I've been far too honest so far. So I'm going to just say I think it's time to get into politics. I think it really is the moment. And so yesterday I sidled up to a Labour councillor and said, I want to become a Labour councillor. So and he nearly vomited in front of me. But anyway, so exactly. How do you do it? And you actually have to roll your sleeves up and get involved, because the people who are making the decisions are simply not engaged with what's really happening on the ground. They want to. They would like to be. Oh, well, the paperwork is, so I've got meetings, that's why I'm going, artists make so world better. We need to start activating ourselves and stop sitting on our hands. The world, and we can't solve all the problems, and there are so many problems coming our way. But over COVID, we created a wound that is so deep that, yes, we're talking about 23 at Frieze being much more jolly and the art market may be recovering. But I can tell you the young people who were affected by that, the teachers, the families, the people who don't get the voice are still on the floor, and their futures are very much defined by those years of isolation and mental health issues. Now, those are all tropes, but the reality is there, and that's why we're out of Jupiter, the glorious house with the beautiful land around it. It's always been a huge kind of stone around my neck, really. Now we're on Air High Street. I'm liberated to go up, and so let's see. They're quite resistant, and I am Scottish, but I have an incredibly English accent, which is quite annoying for them. So there's a mountain to climb, but that's where I am.
It's a really good question, and I might have to come back and tell you about it later. But we're doing it in various ways. We've appointed a community engagement officer, so we have somebody now whose job it is to go out into the community, to have those conversations, and to hopefully begin to kind of bring them to Waddesdon, so that we can start to participate with them and support them and engage with them. So that I think has been a really kind of significant move. We've also got a very active schools education programme. It's actually a tiny team, but they deliver incredible results. And they're wonderful ambassadors into our local community at a certain level, obviously, but of course, if you're talking to the children, you're also talking to their parents. And that whole kind of education piece, which is very much grounded and founded in the collections, whether historic or kind of contemporary, is a really important part of our outreach. And then, we have a whole kind of network of local and community, and then sort of wider. In a way, it kind of falls into the category of marketing, broadly speaking, doesn't it? Because it's about communicating your message, reminding people that you're there, encouraging them to come. One of the things that we're doing at the moment is actually working out how we're going to evaluate it. At the moment, with certainly some of the communities, our very local communities in Aylesbury and elsewhere, the bar is so low that even if we were able to say we've had 200 people come, that would be success for me. So I just find it, well, I sort of know why it is, but I spend a lot of time in taxis going to and from the manor, as you can imagine, and every time I say to the taxi driver, oh, do you know Waddesdon? Have you been? And they always say, oh, yeah, we see it on the hill. It's sort of, we can see its roof line. We've never been. And when I say, well, why? Why haven't you ever been? I mean, it's got a beautiful garden. and they just say, oh, we don't think there's anything there for us. So.
Well, I'm very thankful that we have a lot of foundation in this field, and because I feel like what private are doing for the public is actually more than what the public is doing for the public itself. I hope there is no museum director here in the public, but I feel like the foundation have the power of being more free and on playing its own vision and express its own ways of and be more innovative than museum. And so I feel that this is very important. We might have more support for foundation probably, but it's really interesting to hear how all of you, I mean, have focused in different fields, in different sector of the art and the public, and how you manage to do it. Just finding your own way, because this is it. I mean, there is not like a guide to follow on how to talk to the audience or how to interact with the public and with the community.
I think that's really true, and it's a really good point. I mean, we're not shackled by bureaucracy often, and we often have more funds at our disposal than a lot of the public sector. But I would say that certainly speaking for Waddesdon and the RF, we learn a huge amount from the public sector, and there's a lot that's absolutely brilliant going on, despite no resources, no staff, no anything. And a lot of that activity actually in places like the National Gallery and the BM and everywhere else is obviously funded by patrons and supporters and so on. But they're definitely doing it. I think sometimes we can just be a bit more responsive in what we're doing. We can act a little bit more quickly sometimes.
Well, I feel like that I don't know, to become a patron and to become like a mecenate in this field, you have someone to follow at, and then so it's I feel like what you're doing is really powerful, not just for the young audience and young artists or the public to interact with this field, but also for people to start believing that they can do something, and then they can play a role. An important role in the community.
Because that's where your artists come from. Yeah. Your young people are your artists, aren't they? Yeah.
Celine, right, being a new organization and with COVID in between this couple of years in the middle, how did you design your future projects, like with cultures? The foundation is more interesting once you're in Switzerland, because Joana's representative of Portugal. What is the next projects design where the foundation will be able to bring those perhaps specifically that is?
Yeah, so thank you for your question. We focused on Europe for the first years of the foundation. It's true that in the first years before COVID, we were able to go meet local partners. We actually have a network of partners with 150 organizations today, all working for the craft sector at different levels. That can be education, cultural with museum, and governmental and para-governmental organization. So before COVID, we were able to actually go see the organization, meet them, and talk about how we could build the foundation with a European scope together. We did the first edition of Homo Faber before COVID in 2018 in Venice, and then continued to work, started to expand, worked in Japan, and then COVID happened, and so we had to push back Homo Faber for a couple of years. So 2 years later, we did the second edition. We were lucky in a way because after 2018, we had started to work on what we called the Homo Faber Guide, so this digital platform. And the idea during COVID was to allow anyone from his or her couch to discover the world of craft from his mobile phone. The guide is also a very editorial platform where you can dialogue with artisans directly. You can discover who they are through interviews, and you can contact them directly. We did a lot of studio visits as well during COVID to keep this sense of humanity and human interaction between our users and the artisans that were still, most of them, in their workshop, depending on the country. When COVID stopped, when we started to travel again, well, it never went back to normal in terms of traveling. So we're now setting up a new model of how we could continue our expansion and continue our internationalization, but from Europe, and see how we could work even more strongly with local partners in order to develop. We have worked quite a bit on South and Central America in the past year, a little bit on Asia too, starting to work on the African continent too, with a Pan-African approach, but step by step, life is long and the world is wide, so we take it one step at a time.
Okay. I also have another question, but it's not for this tree foundation, but for Joana. It's how you did. I want to know more about this Reboot organization, how you decided to also open this this program, and well, it's interesting. Like we focused on the public, but it's also interesting to focus on the field as well.
So I want to thank you all. It's really a privilege to have you all here, because this idea of Reboot came out from the partnership with André of thinking that we need to reboot something, and that's what we're all talking here about, which is how we connect again with a different world that has passed through difficult times, and still today we're going through very tough times, war, insecurity. And so in a way, all of us, I think, we think that art can bring us together. Critics, foundations, collectors, museum directors, artists. So from my end in Portugal, I decided that I had to do something. And I've been connected with wonderful people all over the world and meeting all these foundations, and with, you know, Nikki building a swimming pool, or a wedding cake with the Rothschilds, or with the Michelangelo Foundation. And I employ so many artisans that I said I have to connect with them, because in a way they're doing in their end a wonderful job, and I needed to, you know, to connect. And I felt the urge of having all these artisans in the studio and bringing the dialogue between artistic role and the artisans together. So I think that art critics, curators, and press people, everybody is really important to bring an awareness that art can bring people together. That's what I really believe. I believe there is no frontiers. We are just one human race, one earth, and one group of people that are interested in the same thing, which is creation. And that brings joy, and I hope that will bring peace into the world. So in this moment of insecurity, I think art can be, and artisans and people like us can bring an awareness to the world, which is different. And everybody in their own foundation, in their own country, are doing something. And I just said, okay, I need to do my end. So all these discussions and all these moments that we can be together and share our ideas would be the important thing. And I know that your foundation too has an important role in Italy, and you guys are doing also your end. And so everybody together can, you know, can share knowledge, and I hope we can learn from each other, and we can do our role in a better way, because we shared and we learned. That's why we.
Thank you. I feel like this is very precious. This moment is very precious for all of us here, and to get more ideas, more new connections, and also a new knowledge of gain gain a real knowledge of what we're doing and what we're like, which was sorry, which is our role in this field. Yes. So thank you for that.
So I just want to say that we will have a 20-minute coffee break, and then we will come back for the rest of the panels. Thank you. So this is the final panel, and it is a dialogue between the artist Joana Vasconcelos and architect Jacques Pajot, who are collaborating on a project named Triangle de Gonesse, which they will discuss in depth. Jacques will begin by making a short introduction to the theme. Thank you.
Bonjour. My English is so bad. So I have to read my speech. If it's no good, you can stop me and I speak in French. Merci, Joana, de m'inviter à participer à cette table ronde, tout d'abord. My name donc, is Jacques Pajot. The name of the office is November. And Atelier November make many public buildings only. Okay? So a place where people meet other people. It's very important. The theme of the critical condition and the conceptual approach lie linked to it is a real societal issue in today's changing world. I obviously share the anguish of those who think that social networks too often give voice to a multitude of ignorant people. Even though these same networks also participate through useful debates in the new challenge facing humanity. It's okay? But more than just taking a stance in the discussion at this round table, I would like to share with you my own experience as an architect, both humble and ambitious, like the humming bird in the shade construction of better environment. So, some architects sometimes equate themselves with artists, but it seems to me that architects can't hide behind these statues of artists to justify their action. Okay? Important. They have an eminently social role to play in the design of their projects and in all the decisions that shape the city and the way we live together. With the obligation, however, to take a responsible stance to understand the Commission, to consider the use, to to invest the money in the right place and to construct a building that will stand the test of time. Architecture is therefore a useful and social art that must stand the test of time. And if, in addition, the project is recognized as having artistic qualities, why not? But that's something else. Every time an architect arrives on the site, he knows nothing about the context of the project. Each time you have to look for the reason why the site exists, as it does, and then try to complete it, look for the missing piece of puzzle. This understanding of the place, this desire to describe it, to unearth the genius of the place, but also of the city, to understand the commission, all these approaches lead to architecture in an experience that is unique each time. Each time. Architecture is the art of the synthesis, giving pride of place above all the people who will experience its space. So, in contrast to the frenetic pace of fake news, architecture is a constant and real, and in its built present. In the face of misleading and destructive statements, architecture as a place for encounters and exchange becomes, in its practice use, an intangible and useful proof to combat ignorance and misunderstanding of others. Okay? I can repeat. No, it's good? In the face of today's fears, creativity can rise to any challenge. In moments of suspense, it's where we can build a reflection that might enable us to overcome all the opposition that is today more radical, harsher, more frontal. Information overload being a poison. But there is hope, and it's important to cultivate it. We have no choice. For that, we need the eyes of others to become inspired and embodied. Culture and knowledge are windows of the world. Culture and knowledge are windows on the world that allow us to discover that we are all the same, with our humanity, art and architecture, by creating meeting place are on a mission. Atelier Novembre is fortunate to work on projects which programs can help us to participate in this reclaiming of true values. Mostly cultural museums, theaters, library, music of dance, conservatories, but also educational like school, college, secondary school and university. We approach each project with ambition of responding to a question of meaning, openness, invitation, transmission, or reversibility. C'est pas grave. Alors, je peux vous montrer quelques projets.
So he will show the some of the pictures of what he's doing in the surrounding, in French surrounding.
Ici, c'est une médiathèque dans la banlieue est de Paris.
So it's a suburb of Paris. Sorry.
I'll add some Portuguese. É uma mediateca, é uma coisa entre o vídeo e a biblioteca.
Do you speak French?
I speak French, but I'm happy to have you here.
Voilà, je vais être très court parce que ça va être trop long.
So it will be, he will go faster because otherwise it's very long. Sorry, what's the name of the places?
Shell.
Shell.
Il manque une photo, mais ce n'est pas grave.
It's some pictures are missing, but it's okay.
Nous avons voulu faire un univers très coloré.
They want to create the very colorful universe.
Pour que ce lieu soit invitant, que les gens puissent rentrer sans peur.
So the people can join outside without getting struggled or frustrated.
Aujourd'hui, tous les jeunes de cette banlieue viennent lire ou se rencontrer dans ce bâtiment.
So now the young generation is coming to read, to hang out, or just to meet each other.
L'accueil du public a été multiplié par 15.
It was multiplied by 15 the number of the people who came and visited the center.
Et le conservateur de la médiathèque m'a dit, je ne comprends pas, ce bâtiment n'est pas tagué. Tagué.
Tagué.
It was not graffited.
Okay, so he was impressed. So the direction of the center was impressed that there is no graffiti till now on the center.
Ici, c'est un autre lieu, c'est comment dire un ancien bâtiment au bord du lac Léman à Thonon.
So it's a different building on the lakeside Thonon.
Au bord du lac Léman.
Sorry, it's next to Geneva. The lake Thonon. Sorry. Thonon, yeah.
C'est un ancien bâtiment et nous avons créé à l'intérieur du bâtiment, qui est un ancien couvent, une place publique.
So this is the old ancient building which was recreated on the base of Thonon.
Un couvent.
Couvent.
Convent.
Oh, thank you, convent. So it was modernized.
Voilà. Et donc pour en faire un lieu de rencontre, et les gens viennent librement dans cet espace, sans aucun contrôle, sous cette grande verrière. En fait, c'était le cloître du couvent qui est devenu une place publique.
So it became a entrance public free. So free for the public, so they can come anytime and meet each other and spending time together. And
ici, c'est à Paris.
It's in Paris.
C'est l'Institut des mathématiques à Paris.
So it's at the University of Mathematics.
C'est un lieu où tous les chercheurs en mécanique fondamentale du monde entier se rencontrent.
So it's where all researchers from the mathematical and technical background come and meet each other.
Ils peuvent échanger sur leur savoir, sur leur expérience.
And they can exchange their experience, their knowledge together.
Mais à l'intérieur de ce lieu où se concentrent tous les plus grands chercheurs du monde entier,
but in the center of this in the center of this research center, which invite all of their other countries to join and to spend time together.
les parties inférieures, les niveaux inférieurs, il y a un espace de musée de mathématiques pour expliquer les mathématiques au plus grand nombre, au public.
And on the low ground floor, they have a special space which has an access to everyone to understand the mathematical world.
Parce que un des chercheurs m'a dit que pour lui, les mathématiques fondamentales pouvaient être un ascenseur social.
So one of the researchers said that the understanding of math can be a kind of elevator for the social life and social status.
Voilà le plus vieux.
This is the center.
Ici, c'est à Carpentras, dans le sud de la France.
So this is another place, Carpentras, in the south of France.
Dans ce bâtiment qui est un ancien hôpital,
It's a building. It's an old hospital.
il fallait mettre à la fois un musée et une bibliothèque.
They needed to do at the same time a museum and a bibliothèque, and a library. Sorry.
Et par ailleurs, Carpentras, qui est une ville historique,
Carpentras is a historical city.
a beaucoup de problèmes parce que le Front National est un parti qui se développe beaucoup ici dans cette ville.
So this city is a capital for Front National. It's a political party in France, and the city has a lot of problems.
Donc il y a des problèmes politiques et sociaux très forts dans cette ville, qui est assez pauvre.
So the city is very poor, and at the same time it has a lot of social and political issues.
Donc pour nous, le fait de, de transformer cet ancien hôpital qui a été l'hôpital de la ville de Carpentras, donc qui participe à la mémoire des habitants de Carpentras,
So for them to transform this old hospital into the different space for the people of the city,
y mettre des fonctions comme un musée et une bibliothèque était pour nous important pour recréer du lien.
so it was important to create the connection between the city and the art of this space.
Ah, voilà la photo, il y a un mélange. Ça, c'était les couleurs de la bibliothèque d'avant.
So it's the previous photos of the library from the previous art object.
Et pour nous, l'idée, ici on voit le hall, donc une intervention très architecturale, très réduite dans ce lieu protégé.
So they have a limited space in this building.
A été retenu le concept de faire à la fois de mélanger les livres et les œuvres d'art.
So they had to mixture the books and the arts together.
Et on voit ici des tableaux.
The pictures are here, as you can see,
On voit ici des instruments de musique dans des vitrines.
and the musical instrument on the right-hand side in the windows.
Et on voit au loin dans la photo les livres.
And at the back, you can see books.
Et même dans les étagères, il y a des statues étrusques qui sont mêlées aux livres dans les étagères.
So on the shelves, there is Etrusc sculptures integrated between books.
Donc, incroyable. Aujourd'hui, les gens qui vont chercher des bandes dessinées peuvent être en contact direct avec des œuvres d'art, des sculptures, des peintures, des natures mortes de toutes les époques. Ce qui a une chance inouïe d'ouverture.
So for someone who's looking for cartoons, cartoon books will be blended into the ancient culture of Etruscan sculptures as well at the same time.
Enfin, le 104. Le 104 est un centre de création artistique dans Paris, dans le Nord Paris.
Excuse-moi, c'est le centre 4?
Le 104.
104. So this is the project name is 104 in Paris.
Et c'est un centre de création artistique.
So it's a art center in Paris, creative art center.
De 40 000 mètres carrés.
For 40,000 square meters.
Qui s'organise dans un bâtiment qui en fait avant était les pompes funèbres de Paris.
Where they built the coffins. It was a coffin factory.
Donc le projet s'organise autour d'une longue traversée.
So the whole project goes all the way through the building on the very long distance.
Et nous, architectes, nous souhaitions que cette traversée soit libre.
And we wanted that this passage will be free.
Sans contrôle, elle rejoint deux rues, donc sans contrôle de chaque côté, aucun contrôle.
And there is no any control system on both sides.
Ça a été une longue lutte.
So it was a big fight.
Et aujourd'hui, le 104 est une référence dans le monde entier.
And now this center is extremely famous in the rest of the world.
Pour ça.
For this.
Pour ça.
For that.
Pour ça.
They have a very important art program. This is a very tough neighborhood. And Manuel Gonçalves, the director that we both know, is making a program where you have a lot of students. You have a circus school, you have dancing classes, hip-hop classes, and the whole community goes here every day. So made a very important program, educational program with the local community, and it changed completely the neighborhood. They have an art program associated to galleries. Continua Gallery have worked a lot here, and other projects, and they bring people from all over the world to exhibit here. So it's a wonderful project that first the architects transformed it completely, and then through an artistic community, Italian, French, and people from all over the world have helped this neighborhood to change completely. So I exhibit there 3 times already, and every time it's a wonderful experience because you feel that you're not out on, Paris, central Paris. You're just going to a community and being part of the changes that are happening in that neighborhood. So it's really a wonderful place to visit.
La traversée est libre et la population entière du quartier peut venir pour différentes activités. Le chant, la danse, le hula toute activité possible, c'est libre. Et malgré le fait qu'il y ait effectivement de la création artistique,
Sorry. Thank you. So because the entrance is completely free, so all neighborhood can come and join for dance, singing, all sort of activities which is free to access for everyone.
Après, je pourrais parler longtemps de ce projet, mais je préfère en rester là.
I prefer to stop here because I have a lot of to tell about it.
Ce qui m'amène à parler maintenant du Grand Paris Express.
Pardon?
Oula. Ce qui me permet maintenant de parler de ce qu'on met en commun du Grand Paris Express.
So what he's engaged to speak today about the grand project of Paris Express.
Yes. The Grand Paris Express is a construction of 200 kilometers, the new lines around Paris.
I'll take it from here. So this is the project that we are collaborating together. and we've met in the 104 before, but now I'm very privileged to be part of this huge project. I think one of the biggest ever done in the world, which is in France, they are connecting in Paris all the train stations from the outskirts of Paris. So we're talking about 200 kilometers of train connections. So first of all, this is an engineering project. It's a social project, an architectural project, and it ends up by being an artistic project too. So they are developing 70 train stations, no, 68 new train stations, and every train station has an artist. And they are connecting neighborhoods which were not connected, and they were far away from the center of Paris, and they're putting art in every train station. I'm very privileged to be part of one of them with the Atelier Novembre, but there's many, many artists and many people from France and all over the world being asked to do a body of work for a very strange location, and we're working together with architects, and that's being a privilege. So that's what we wanted to show you today.
Every day, more than 2 million communities and voyageurs will come into contact with his gigantic collection of public art, accessible to all, so that in the world of Société du Grand Paris, architecture et culture permettent de réinventer le vivre ensemble dans un esprit d'ouverture et d'attachement à son territoire.
So they're bringing alive a project that will connect people with art in their everyday life, but also people can go from every train station and visit. So it's an art program that you go by train. So it's a public art program more than anything else, but they're thinking of connecting all the train stations. You can also go and see the art projects. So our train station is it's called Triangle de Gonesse. It's in Gonesse. There's not much in Gonesse, that's what I hear, but Jacques has been...
The avion, the airplane of Roissy.
Yes, close to Roissy, to the airport, and so there's a lot of planes.
The new station is comment dire, a new quarter, un nouveau quartier.
It's a new neighborhood.
Et la gare est au centre du nouveau quartier.
It's in the center of this neighborhood, so there's nothing there, and they're just putting a train station there.
La gare a la chance aussi d'être dans un terrain qui descend.
It's in a land that it descends, so there's different levels.
Donc, elle a deux niveaux d'entrée, ce qui est rare dans les gares, un niveau haut depuis le parvis et un autre depuis la cour basse en bas.
So there's two different levels of access, one in an upper level and one on the lower level. So that's very strange for a train station. Normally, it's always the access to the train station must be at the same level.
Et aussi, singularité de cette gare, c'est qu'elle est peu profonde. En général, les gares sont des gares souterraines de 30 mètres de profondeur, alors que celle-ci, comme elle n'est pas très profonde, on peut voir depuis l'espace public le niveau du quai.
So then, normally train stations are very deep. They go to 30 meters low under the earth, but this one is not the case, so it's not very deep. So you can have natural light access to the gates. So that's not common. Normally we get out of the train, we don't see much natural light, but here that's one of the issues. You can actually have natural light coming to the gates.
Donc c'est une gare qui est tout en longueur, de la longueur des quais, et peu épaisse.
So it's a very long train station and very, very short, not very wide. Okay. Narrow, it's very narrow, yeah.
Et pour nous, il était important, dans notre intervention, de créer des grandes transparences pour que, d'une part, on puisse amener des vues depuis l'extérieur vers l'intérieur, mais aussi depuis l'intérieur vers l'extérieur, et ainsi amener de la lumière dans la gare.
So they wanted to make a very transparent train station where the light comes in and comes out, where you can actually have a view over the train station. So it's a very transparent and very light construction.
donc, les gares, c'est très compliqué, les gares, parce qu'il faut justifier chaque dimension, chaque hauteur, et il faut optimiser ces dimensions hauteur pour avoir des gares qui soient, comment dire, dominées au niveau économique, qui soient maîtrisées au niveau économique.
So it's very complex to build a train station because you need to measure and justify every inch, every construction. And this is one of the cases. So here they had to go very step by step with the engineers to explain whatever they were building, because on the budgets, you can think of 68 train stations. So the budget limits, it's huge. How you engage with the architects and with the artists is a very complex process.
Mais nous avons réussi quand même à avoir des volumes généreux, des grandes profondeurs, des courants de glaise, on appelle ça des courants de glaise, ici en France, qui apportent cette lumière et ces transparences et ces profondeurs.
So they arrived to they managed in their project to have big high ceilings, long depth corridors, and they call the English corridors because they're very long, and in a way to bring light into the train station. And we've been the other day in a presentation where we were underground, 20 meters underground in a very dark train station, and we were like, okay, our train station has a lot of light, right?
Et c'est là, dans cet espace ici, que va intervenir Joana.
So that's where I was asked to do something that would connect people with inside and outside. And so with the Atelier Novum, they said, well, we would like to bring that alive. So they asked me to make an intervention in this corridor. And actually people get out on the train over there and they exit over there, and then they have access to the surface by some stairs. And so they wanted me to do something to talk about it.
Et quand on nous a présenté Joana, on s'est dit que le travail de Joana, dans l'architecture rigoureuse que nous proposons, très rigoureuse, technique, on s'est dit le contraste, le dialogue va être super.
So when they invited me, they wanted me to make an intervention within the very rigorous architectural program, and also respecting what they had succeeded to manage to bring the light into the building and to build something very light and very beautiful. So they said, Jack said right away, you have to do this in this corridor. And I said, okay. I was like, oh, I'll do it outside. But then they said, no, I really want people to emphasize this light and these two levels of access and you know, how you can see from the exit of the train, you can see the landscape.
On aurait pu imaginer ce genre de sculpture, mais effectivement, il y a des contraintes quand même fortes pour ne pas avoir des produits inflammables. Attention à l'entretien, la poussière, le toit, enfin, il y a plein de contraintes.
So there's many challenges, and in a train station you cannot build everything. So they really wanted something that would bring color and texture, but of course you cannot bring fabrics into a train station. There's the cleaning issues, sustainability of people going through. So what I've designed a line. One of the things that Jack told me is that when people have access from the train station, which is at this level, they would exit and see something. So because all of this is glass, the first thing I did was to draw a line of color with the drawing and tiles. All of it is ceramics. And that would bring, and people just go up here to the ground level through the stairs. And we wanted people to feel that they would accompany the artwork, and the artwork would follow them through their path. And because the lines are important here, and people come in a line on the train, they exit and they have a line exiting, the idea of drawing and having a line that follows people through their way, it was interesting. So what I did was I have a first panel here and a second panel that is detached on the ceiling, and when people go through their way, they just are followed by the artwork itself. So it's not an artwork that's just in one place, it follows people, and every time you get inside of this train station or out, you see a different thing. So it can be seen from the outside, can be seen from the inside, and it can be always different if you follow a different path. So you can see, and here it's a view. So when you get to the street angle, you see it like this. but when you get inside, you have a completely different perspective. So all of these are, it's not very large, it's a wall like this, but it has full of tiles in one end and on the other, and the drawing. And here you can see the panel that is behind the glass when you exit the train station. And here you can see the part on the top that people will see either from inside or from outside. So this is the view of a person that gets exit. If you follow your right or your left, you'll have a drawing that is over there. If you look up, you'll see the rest of the painting. It's like I've cut the painting in 2 bits. So you have this different perspective. And this is a view from the outdoors. You can see here the top. And this is a person getting out of the train. And this you can see both. So it's like the part of the top was detached, and you can always, it's like a puzzle really. You can actually think that both of them, they go together, they will be a unique drawing. It's like if the drawing was left at bottom on the train station and the other one on the top. It's the last, yes. No, there's one more? Ah, there you are. So this is a good example, I think, and I think today it was quite clear that as an artist, I can be part of different dimensions, and I'm very pleased to say that today I have many friends here and people that I know for many years. And as an artist, I can be working in a collection, a private collection like Jupiter Artland, or in a big, more historical foundation like the Rothschild Foundation, or a crafts foundation like the Michelangelo Foundation. So it's many dimensions. But one of the most important dimensions of all this is the relationship with architects. Because in a way, architects, they bring alive buildings, they transform buildings, and they give them back to the public. That's what happens with the Atelier Novembre. They keep on restoring and building buildings for people and for cities and for communities. And as an artist, to engage with an atelier like Novembre and be able to be part of that connection with the public and with the communities like the 104, it's really important because in a way, we are in a public role, all of us. And as the foundations that we saw today, they engage with the public, want so much to connect. Architects, they do that. And in this case, Jacques does that all the time. That's his role, and to engage with local communities and transform them through his work. But also artists engage with architects and foundations. We can also help those institutions to make that connection. It's a more personal one. You do a more public one, but in a way, all together, we can bring that connection in a stronger way. So I'm very pleased that this project has not happened yet. He's still building the train station. It will be done in 2027, you think? Yes? So that will be my future big project. But in a way, today we heard different dimensions and we heard different needs. But in the end, all of us, we want to connect. And we want to bring awareness to the world through art, through architecture, and through education, in a way.
Il y a une chose importante aussi pour moi, c'est que quand on s'aperçoit que face à ces ingénieurs de la SGP qui sont très rigoureux et qui veulent vraiment que ça coûte le moins peu cher possible et qu'on doit être obligé de justifier tous les choix, ils ont eu l'idée, le courage, l'initiative de mettre des œuvres d'art dans toutes les gares, ce qui n'est pas gratuit, ce qui est un coût énorme. Et donc, chapeau. Pourquoi ? Eh bien, nous, quand on travaille les gares, on essaye de travailler avec les mémoires, avec le territoire. Qu'est-ce que raconte ce territoire ? Qu'est-ce qu'on a envie de raconter ? Pourquoi ? Pour valoriser les passagers, les gens qui prennent le train tous les jours. Donc c'est important, ça. C'est un geste qui participe aussi à créer du lien social. Bon. Et c'est pas gratuit.
Attends, Jacques. Attends, je traduis un petit peu.
Non, vous avez compris.
Vous avez compris? I will translate really fast. So what Jacques is saying, and I think I'm very impressed by this project too, because engineers and train stations, they not many times think about people and how you connect with people. And the architects were asked to transform the train stations beautiful, yes, but then when they included the artists, that was a different level of connection, because they were thinking about how people live their everyday life, how people enter in the suburbs and go on train here and there, and they were concerned with that. And so adding the artists was a very important layer to this project. And the architects were very happy to engage with the artists. And there's a unique thing. There were curators too in this project. So there's 3 levels. There's the architects, the curators, and the artists. And the curators were very happy to curate with the architects to choose the artist. And that was beautiful, because I was called by a friend. The curator said, "Oh, I'm working with these architects and they love your work." And I said, "Who is the curator? You or the architect?" "No, we are both the curators." And it was very nice to include the curators too. And so the curators discussed with the artists what they wanted, and then they chose together the artists. And so that was very nice. It was not like, oh, an architectural thing or a curatorial thing. It was a joint venture between the 2 worlds, and with the agreement of the engineers. And that was pretty awesome when we had, and they said, "You have to present your project to the engineers." I said, "Oh my God, it's gonna be terrible." But it didn't. They really loved, and they loved to see how you can change everyday life of people that go to work back and forth.
Deuxième chose, déjà, pas c'est fini. Si, je promets. C'est que ce n'est pas gratuit, et donc si la SGP, la Société du Grand Paris, met autant d'argent dans des œuvres à installer au Dakar, c'est que ça va rapporter à la société, ça va créer du lien. Voilà. Et ça fait faire en sorte que finalement les gens vont se sentir valorisés et par cette présence d'une œuvre artistique qui ne sert à rien au fonctionnement même de la gare, mais qui est en au-delà.
So,
Donc c'est un beau cadeau.
So,
le temps, on y passe du temps aussi.
it's true that they found out how do you say, the Société of French train, Société Grand Paris, train thing, whatever. But what they understood is that bringing the art will bring them a style of life which doesn't bring money directly, and they are spending a lot of money in this project. And I have to say that I'm part of a lot of public art projects, and this one was held very seriously. So the curators are paid, the artists are paid, and you have to present a project and a budget, and it's really serious. And they are, we went through a lot of levels of exception, and they could not have spent so much money in artists, but they understood by doing so that will bring a better life to people, and that people would go to these train stations in a happier way. And in the future, that will bring money to the train company. So it's not direct, but it's in another level. And so the architects were happy, the curators were happy, and then suddenly everybody's connected, and that has been a pleasure, no?
Yes. Il n'y a pas longtemps, en France, est passée une émission qui s'appelle Nous les ouvriers. Et dans cette émission magnifique qui racontait la vie des ouvriers, il y a un ouvrier, il y avait 5 témoignages. Il y en avait un qui disait, moi un jour, on m'a mis en contact avec l'art, on m'a montré des collections, on m'a expliqué. Et dans ma petite vie d'ouvrier, par rapport au monde rikiki dans lequel j'évoluais, ça a été une ouverture pour moi maximum.
Okay, let me just explain. They did a show about workers all over Paris, and one of them said that when he was in contact with art and somebody explained to him about art, he just discovered a whole new world for him. So he was very grateful that suddenly somebody had, show him or talk to him about art.
Et donc pour lutter contre l'ignorance, la critique condition, voilà, il faut à tout niveau participer et montrer que finalement c'est fake news, c'est du fake news et que la réalité elle est autre, construite.
So it says that everybody has a critical condition, and everybody can add something and people can understand. And fake news is fake news. We have to make it happen every day, in every job we have, and every moment we can all contribute for a better world, and through art, architecture, writing, talking, and all of us in a way are doing that every day. So I think that we thank you so much for everybody for being here. It has been a pleasure. In the name of the foundation and with the help of André and all of us, it has been a pleasure to organize these talks through the world, and we'll continue to do so. But more than anything else, I think that it's a privilege to be able to work and to meet people all over the world like you guys. Now we're here in London, but we've been in Paris, and we've been meeting people all over the world, and we'll go to Malta. And it's very good to see that everywhere there's somebody that's interested in keeping this going, and to believe that art can make a difference, and all together we can make a difference. And so I think that André now will give us the final talk, but it has been a pleasure. Thank you to all, and I hope that the world will be a better place with our help. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jack.
So it's a kind of anticlimax. Nothing ends until the Fat Lord sings. So I will sing for you. This, as Joana told, is a process of collaboration between Joana and Filomena. I have strange ideas, talk with Joana, she approves, and Filomena put us in shape to pay the bills of these things, like a kind of Holy Trinity. I'm the Holy Ghost. My English is very bad. I don't excel in other languages like my fellow Portuguese. We are a country of migrants. Everybody have somebody abroad. My family is a migrant too. We came from Baden-Württemberg in the 3rd century after Christ, and we established there a long time. What we are discussing here is the possibility or give a voice, give a stage to all the ecosystem of the art, of the contemporary art world, to address, to discuss issues, not only the artists, who are the central figure on the process, but all the people who contribute and collaborate in this thing. Probably next year we talk about that issue, we talk the money issue. The idea of this last panel of the beauty of everyday things came from a book of a Japanese scholar called Soetsu Yanagi. He made a book called The Beauty of Everyday Things. And we are rounding this subject for sometimes because of the talk we have with Celine Vogt last year and about the Miguel Angel Foundation. And the idea of the critic condition came from a talk of Umberto Eco some years ago, when he says that the web gives voice to everybody, so the web gives voice to a lot of stupid people. And that problem is that you can see every day people making hate declarations in the web. I don't know if you are aware, but 2 weeks ago, a critic from ArtNet, Ben Davies, wrote an article about a young artist, a guy who's very popular in TikTok. And all the followers of this artist of the TikTok make very bad things, write very bad things in the web about the critics. So now, as Sacha said, we must be aware what you are saying in public. I have some kind of medical status. I can say whatever I want. Nobody takes me serious. The project will continue. I think it's important to discuss all these subjects, all these matters, because we change, we shift from a world where everything was allowed, and now almost nothing is allowed. I started as a journalist in the 90s, and my first role is to go to the place where they print the newspapers, and the very small newspapers in Lisbon. So my role is to extend or cut the articles, because if we have more publicity, we need to make the notice shorter. If we lack the publicity, we need to make it longer. So I extend or cut. I was an editor of the articles of the others. Now we don't need to do that because you have everything in digital and you can make it, but now people don't want to pay. They don't want to have information. They want to have content. And the content must, in some way, be pleasant to the reader. So we have this. The idea of somebody validate or not validate your work is not so nice for everybody. So maybe next year we can find each other in another venue. I was thinking in Italy because the Sorals Persano, they bring me chocolates from Torino, so I miss the chocolates and the wine and the truffles and all that thing. Maybe we can talk about truffles. It's a good subject. So thank you to our sponsors and to the people who work in the project. Maura is a friend for a long time, Carlotta, the newcomer, and the Holy Trinity and all the other guys. Thank you.
Let's take a family picture. If we can bring in all the speakers to the front.